Hi everyone, welcome back. I'm Michael Sandler, your host on Inspire Nation. If you've ever wanted true transformation in your life, then do we have the Sacred Power Show for you. Today I'll be talking with best-selling author Davidji, stress management expert, meditation teacher, and the author of a brilliant new book and treatise on life and on awakened transformation, Sacred Powers. And that's just what I want to talk with him about today, about discovering your sacred powers for awakened transformation, opening your heart, and connection with the divine. That, plus we'll talk about cardboard boxes and butterflies, a search for Nady, stomach knots and the power of scotch, the sacred power of sending text, and what in the world the mantra of moksha has to do with anything. So welcome back to the show, Davidji. Are you ready to shine?
I am so ready to shine. Woohoo!
Woohoo! And so how did you hire all of the birds that you have in the background and get them on your crew?
Well, after you invited me to be on the show, I sent out an alert to the universe and invited anyone and everyone who could possibly be interested in connecting to Inspire Nation. And so they just showed up.
Woohoo! All right, so if we go back in time from there, if we go way, way, way on back in time, were you always spiritual?
Well, I don't know. I guess the definition that I would have of spirituality is that here we are, mortal, flawed, sealed in this flesh casing for the span of a lifetime, bumbling, stumbling, making mistakes, falling into crevices, having titanium plates and femurs put into our body. And then there's this best version of us. It's sort of like up here someplace. It's the perfect version of us. It knows the perfect thing to do. It's highly intuitive. It always moves in the right direction. It always says the right thing. It always does the right thing. It's you in the zone. And so that exists simultaneously. And I believe that spirituality is essentially a journey from this mortal, flawed human existence, which is beautiful and magnificent, to this best version of ourselves. And the spiritual journey is every time we suddenly can access that best version and take a thimbleful back into our lives, a tweezer full, an eyedropper full of that. And it's not a one-way trip, we reach for our best version and we pull our best version back into our mortality and then vibrate at a higher level. So I guess I believe that we're all spiritual, but we're not all aware of it. So not everybody is trying to be their best version in every single moment, but everyone has the ability, if they're aware, to access that best version. So we all have the ability to access that. So there were flickers in my younger days that I got it, or saw it, or felt, there's a better version. There's something bigger than me. Let me see if I can access that. But then as I got more deeply involved in the corporate world and got sucked into that mindset, which is beautiful and magnificent and amazing, but I didn't know there were any tools at the time. So that's really where my, probably one of my major shortcomings came from. So I would say I've always been spiritual, but I've never been more aware and awake.
Sometimes those things that are most challenging or seem most, I don't know if asleep is the right word, but those are the best seeds for where we are now. So if I understand right, you were working 18-hour days and pretty much driving yourself into the ground. Yes,
that would be a fair assumption.
And then that all changed in a butterfly moment.
That it did. Of course, that's my terminology. I don't know that you can find that in the dictionary. Webster's doesn't have that. But
yet, Davidji, we're going to put it in. We're going to make a pitch. We'll sponsor it. We'll do whatever we can.
This moment was brought to you. This butterfly moment brought to you by. Yes, that all changed. And again, it's not that there was anything really different happening, but suddenly I accessed a higher vibration. In the wake of 9/11, I was, trapped in my little corporate world and feeling the pain and the weight of all the the violence and devastation and the world shift that had occurred on 9/11. And I was walking, in Soho, southern Manhattan. And I was passing a row of cardboard boxes that people were living in. And as I walked past this one particular box, this hand reached out. I didn't even see a face, but a hand reached out and grabbed my pant leg. And, if you're just walking down the street and you walk past a cardboard box and someone grabs your leg, your initial response is to, pull back and go, "Hey, what are you doing?" Certainly if you're in New York, you might throw a few expletives at that situation. But for some strange reason, the hand grabbed my pant leg, and I stopped and I leaned in, and a face came out of the box and peered into my eyes and asked that first question, which was, "What's going to be on your tombstone?" Which that's quite a pattern interrupt. It's a fairly reflective question, especially to be asked by someone that you've never met or seen or anything in your life. And in that moment, suddenly, everything shifted. I had never before felt this, experienced this. The vibration of my entire existence shifted. And I know it sounds like totally cooked out, but it happened. And suddenly there I was in the middle of a very, very busy, loud, crazy street in New York City. And then suddenly, there was no sound. All the people on the street moved away. We could probably refer to this as some type of psychotic experience, but all the people moved away. All the traffic stopped. All the noise stopped. And in fact, everything on the street, the building, the rest of the sidewalk, all just moved away. And in that moment, here I was with this being who asked me, a few more, highly reflective questions. And I really didn't know what to do. I was out of my body. He was out of his body. We were one with the universe. I was in a total tranced out, blissed out, cooked out state. And then we had I didn't really say much. I gasped a couple of times and I was holding my breath and went, "Huh? What?" But I reached in my pocket to pull out a few dollars to give this person. I figured I was being accosted for a donation or some charity. And he pinned my hand into my pocket and he said, "It's not about the money. It's about your sacred powers." And I was like, I don't even know what that is. And suddenly there was a whole different, my brain actually felt like it went, shifted to a higher level. And we stayed in this space, which seemed like hundreds of hours, weeks, was probably just, I don't know, a minute or so. And we just stayed connected and stayed connected and stayed connected and stayed connected. And I felt myself merging with the universe. And of course, there I was in a three-piece suit in the corporate world, not even thinking about any such gibberish or absurdity as being one with the universe or feeling the divine flow. And, I dropped that money on the sidewalk. I leaned down to pick it up and hand it to him. And he was gone. He had already withdrawn back into his home of cardboard. And, so I tucked that money inside the towel. It's actually a towel that was hanging over the front of the box, and began walking away. And suddenly just felt so weak. After I walked 20 feet, I had to sit down on the steps of an apartment building there. And I realized I was I was shaking, I was vibrating, I was dripping sweat. And, I could have chalked that up to just kooky New York City, just a kooky little encounter. But in that moment, I came home, shared this conversation with my wife, and then left my job, left New York, headed out on my own little eat, pray, love journey without the eating and the love, in search of sacred powers, in search of the guru, in search of, questing for what was this? And, to this day, I believe that certainly was the universe, God, the divine, just being channeled through some being who just was able to just vibrate at such an a wildly high level. And my life was changed forever from that moment. I never went back to that world. I pretty much, in New York parlance, you could say I blew up, my life. Others considered what I did a dream job. I was a mergers and acquisitions advisor, but I was pretty much, working 18 hours a day for I don't even know what. I have no idea what that was, and it seemed so far away, considering now I wake up and I get to go like, here I am in the sacred, precious present moment. What would you have me do with it today? And what a different shift on feeling purposeful and living life with intention.
What was it like when you walked in, if you can recall? I've got goosebumps here, and into work to say, I'm out of here. It's interesting. I had been so zoned in, so focused, so locked into this job, which, and that was really all my whole life was about. But in that moment, I had been sleepwalking probably for about 18 years. Mm-hmm. And so it was the first time in my life that there was excitement. It was like, oh my God, I'm gonna go in and share the fact that, I'm not gonna sleepwalk anymore. And that was, it was a horrifying concept initially. But the reality of it was that it felt so right. And really since that moment, I've tried to make only choices that feel right. So if it doesn't feel right, if it's compromising me in some way, if I feel some type of conflict in my heart, I don't do it, regardless of how much money is offered or how exciting it may seem on some other level. It doesn't feel right, I don't do it. But that felt so right. It felt like a liberation. It felt like a freedom. It felt like truly allowing myself to trust. And Woo-hoo! I hadn't even really explored the concept of trust, but that was, and clearly, why do you fear? Because you do not trust. And so I remind myself of that every day when I start to do something new or crazy or outside of my comfort zone. And I'll ask myself, why do I fear? Because I do not trust. So let me lean in a little harder into trusting. Thank you. So let's go from there. And talking about leaning into trust, you had quite the adventure in India trying to find, I don't know if I pronounce it right, a nadi or I'm going to go with nadi. Yeah. And wild levels of trust here.
Yes. I was traveling around India. Well, after I blew up my life, I headed off to actually, I went first to England to hang out with Deepak Chopra, who I'd never met. I didn't know anything about him. But my wife said, oh, he's doing a meditation retreat in Oxford, England. You should check that out. So I headed over to there for a week and really, meditated for like 5-6 hours a day, every single day. And then, of course, I was like, all right, I must go in search of the guru. So I headed off to India, really looking for this nadi. And Deepak had referenced it when we were hanging out together. And I said, so what's the nadi? And they said, well, the nadi, in fact, if you're a nadi, your family has been a nadi for thousands of years. Essentially, what happened thousands of years ago, this group of people wrote down the entire history of the world, everything that had ever happened and everything that would ever happen to every single being on the planet. And they wrote it down on these palm leaves. They're only like this big. And, but, they took leaves, they aged them. They took some lamp soot and mixed that with some gum that they found in the forest. And they wrote down in the ancient language of Tamil on these leaves that are only about this big in teeny, teeny, tiny hieroglyphic writing. Every single person, every single thing that has happened to them in their past lives, this current life, and future lives. And so if you buy that, if you believe that. So I went in search of that. I needed to find the nadi and hear what was my past life? What was my future life? What would happen in this life? So it's like having the true crystal ball. So I searched all over India, and I'd be going into villages and they didn't speak English and I didn't speak either Hindi or Tamil or any of them. And I was wandering for weeks, sort of like Indiana Jones in search of the whatever. And people were like, oh, Nadi, that way. But I didn't know they meant like 800 miles. And so after traveling through India in search of the Nadi, in search of these answers to discover my sacred powers, all on the words of some guy living in a box that I met for a couple of minutes, who like grabbed me and stared into my eyes. You can tell I'm fairly suggestive. If someone says, "Hey, check that out," I'm like, I'm in. And so I wandered into this town in Tamil Nadu, southern India, after, and I was distinctly the only person who has pink skin like this, or who didn't speak Tamil. And as I was walking through, this marketplace with people like pointing at me and taking pictures of me and giggling as they were watching me in my, American clothes or Western clothes. And suddenly this kid walks up to me and it was another butterfly moment. Suddenly he came up to me, he cut through the crowd, and he took my hands and he said, "Mr. David, I've been waiting for you." And I'm like, what's going on here? Who is this? What's happening here? And he just like weaved me through all these things. He spoke no other English. I spoke no Tamil. We sat there, actually stood there on the side of the street, drinking some tea together, and started talking to each other. I only was speaking English. He was only speaking Tamil back to me. I didn't understand what he was saying. He didn't understand what I was saying. And we were chatting away. And I was saying, "Oh my God, you wouldn't believe what happened. I met this guy and he told me I should, find my sacred powers. And here I am." And he's like talking in Tamil. I couldn't even understand it. Even Hindi, I sort of can flow with it, or Sanskrit. I understand that, but Tamil, no idea. And then he sort of like agreed on one word, nadi. And he was like, nadi, nadi, nadi. Actually, he was shaking his head like this, because this means yes. in Tamil, shaking your head no means yes. So every time I would ask him a question, I didn't know it.
Is it yes? Like is it no?
And I was thinking, but he was saying yes to me, but I was thinking he was saying no. Anyway, he convinced me to jump into this jalopy. We drove for hours, talking, talking to each other, talking at each other. But we developed like a really beautiful vibration. And he took me to the edge of this jungle. We stopped the car. We walked for a couple of hours through the jungle, and he kept saying, nadi, nadi. And then he brought me to this guy in the middle of the jungle. And I said, "Oh my God, are you the nadi?" And this guy spoke English and Hindi and Tamil. And he was like, "No, I'm not the nadi, but I can take you to the nadi." And I was like, "Oh my God, this is unfolding incredibly." Starting on a street in southern Manhattan, suddenly going to this town, into this guy's car, walking through the jungle, and it's a jungle. There's like tigers and stuff inside that jungle. All sorts of jungle noises of animals and us walking along. And he was so relaxed and so sweet. And the next day, that man that I had met took me to the nadi, who was this gravelly voiced, grunting guy wrapped in like a cape, almost like a blanket, and that was like one of the coolest things, because he was like, "Okay, here's what you need to do. he spoke no English either. So that's why the other gentleman was my translator. And so he held out his thumb. So I held out my thumb, and he took like this black ink, and he pushed my thumb into the black ink, and he went into the back room, and for like 45 minutes, he meditated on my thumbprint. And then he came back, and he said, you are the Davidji who lives in Paris and you have 4 children? I'm like, no. He flips the leaf. He goes, you are the Davidji who lives in Australia and, you're single and you're a triathlete? I'm like, no. And he goes, you are Davidji, your mother is Olga, your father is Jay, your wife is Rosani. And I was like, oh my God, yes, that's me. And I was like, let me see that leaf. I'm from New York. I'm a little skeptical on this stuff. And it was just hieroglyphics. I was like, how is this even possible? And then he went on. And normally you go, when you visit the Nadi, you pretty much can look at like 2 or 3 aspects of your life. Maybe past lives, maybe future lives, maybe your current life, maybe your work, maybe your health, maybe your love life or relationships, maybe like what your dharma or purpose is. But I'm an extremist. So I was like, let's do it. Bring it on. He was like, what category do you want? And I was like, all of them. And that's a mistake. That was definitely
fire hose.
So we went. He read to me every single thing that had happened in my past lives, which was the most traumatic thing that I've ever experienced in my life. Because imagine if someone told you all these horrible things that you had done and you were oblivious to them. You had no idea. You don't even remember doing them, and you just have to accept, oh, gee, that's where I've come from. Here's where I am. Mm-hmm. He revealed to me everything that would unfold in this life right up to the moment of my death and how I would die and when I would die. And then he revealed to me things that would happen in future lives. I spent a lot less time on the future life stuff. I was really, in that moment, I was trying to figure out what's going to happen to me from this point. But I mean, he said things to me that could not have been calculated. And he told me things about operations I had had when I was a child. And he shared with me interactions that I had with people, in this life. He knew a scar that was covered by my shirt. I mean, it was like one of these most bizarre, amazing, transformational moments. So that was like, another butterfly moment. There were times in that where suddenly there was nothing. And there were times when, like a waterfall, like Niagara Falls, just gushing onto me, sharing. And he started sharing to me about this concept of sacred powers. And that what were my sacred powers in past lives and my sacred powers in this life, And I said, are these just my sacred powers? And he said, no, these are universal sacred powers. But we all get to awaken them or not at different times in our life. And, your question about, the spiritual journey and spirituality, mm-hmm. that's where we get to access, if we're aware of them at least, and then we can access them, and then we can awaken them. Then suddenly our lives get taken to higher levels. We start living with a higher vibration. We start living with deeper purpose. We start living with greater clarity. And what comes out of it, ultimately, we start making better choices. We start making better decisions. And I think that's universal. Everybody would like to make a better choice in a given moment. Everybody hopes, I hope this is the best choice. I believe this is the best choice. And so I believe we're all doing our best at our own level of consciousness in a given moment. But if we can raise our consciousness, then our best will be better. Then our choices will be better. Then the outcomes will be better. And so we can't force outcomes, and we don't create outcomes. We create outlook. Mm-hmm. The Bhagavad Gita chapter 2, verse 47 says, you have total control over your own actions, but no control over the fruit of those actions. But if we can make our actions come from a higher place of consciousness, then there's a higher likelihood or probability that those outcomes will be closer to what we expected. And sometimes they will be nothing what we expected, but they'll be, I'm sure you wouldn't trade any aspect of your life regardless of how traumatic or painful or excruciating, because it's gotten you to this moment, this magnificent moment where you can make a very, very powerful choice, or a more enlightened choice, or a more conscious choice. So, yeah, that was a fairly intense day for me.
I think that's both a woohoo and a holy crap moment all wrapped in one. So I want to dive into alignment here in a moment, and then into the sacred powers. But before we do that, I have got to ask, when you know or are told when and how you're going to pass away, how does that change one's life?
Well, it's such a great question, Michael, because initially, I was showing up more with arrogance. I was like, yeah, bring it on, tell me everything, there's nothing I can't handle, bring it on to me. But it took me quite a while to ultimately make peace. Not so much with when I'm going to die and how I'm going to die, but what I had done in my past life. I needed to go through like a whole release and forgiveness process, and like, how could I have done certain things in my past life? And, some of them were truly, I couldn't even imagine doing them in this life. And I guess maybe that's why I'm here to be a better version of myself. I wrote furiously. I had like a notebook, and I wrote, like my life depended on it, because the Nadi would be reading the leaf, grunting out something, going, and this is a bad representation, and I apologize to anyone from Tamil, but this is what it sounded like to me. And then the translator would take that, and he would say, the Nadi says, when you were a young child, you fell and, sliced the side of your rib cage. And I would go, oh my God. And then the translator would say to the Nadi, which is, oh my God, or whatever. And that's how this whole conversation was going on. So at times I would just be looking at, and I wasn't even looking at the translator. I was staring into the eyes of the Nadi. So he was grunting at me. The translation was coming, and then I was talking to him, and the translation would go back. And so many times I said to him, oh my God, Nadi, you're unbelievable. And then he would translate that to the Nadi, and the Nadi would say, I'm just reading the leaf. I'm not clairvoyant. I'm just reading the leaf. Now, of course, there's an obvious amount of translation that goes along with it. For example, one of the things that the Nadi said to me was that I was going to be a global teacher of meditation. Now, at the time, I had been a mergers and acquisitions advisor who was recently unemployed, and I was not teaching anyone anything. My philosophy was like, I'm from New York. Like, if you don't know it, learn it on your own. But certainly that's not me. And he said, oh, and by the way, your books will be translated into other languages. And I was like, I've never even written a book. And so there were all these very, very weird conversations going back and forth where I was just having my mind blown, but I was trusting. So I just kept writing all this stuff down. Mm-hmm. And before we had gone to the Nadi, we had meditated and we had practiced yoga, and I had been oiling myself, and so the oil was I had like a whole bunch of, these things on my wrist. They were covered in oil. And so I was writing, they were getting dragged across the piece of paper. And so there were all these oil marks on the paper, and the pens would stop, and I would go, ugh! And then, so I used up like 6 pens in that process. Like, I need another pen. I need to write all this down. But I had to make a certain amount of peace over the next days and weeks. Listen, upon hearing, here's when you're going to die, and here's how, it can take your breath away. Fortunately, it was encased in all this other information from my past and future that sort of like made it appear a lot more subtle in that moment. But in the days and weeks that followed, that was the shavasana for me. That was the big integration of getting all this information and understanding it, And so there was this time right after I got home where I was driving in my car, and I was driving like 100 miles an hour and I wasn't wearing a seatbelt. And my wife was sitting next to me, and she was like, "Could you please slow down and put on your seatbelt?" And I said to her, "I know I'm not going to die today, so it doesn't matter." And she goes, "But you don't know that you're not going to be in an accident. I'll be killed, and then you'll be maimed for the rest of your life." And I went, "Oh,
good point."
Yeah. So it took me some time to not be so arrogant about that.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of like the moment I'm going to die, I know that I'm not going to die right now. So I don't put my attention on that moment and when it is and how it is and what that will all be, as much as I know the clock is ticking. Mm-hmm. And so I have to show up and be brilliant and magnificent every single day. I have to bring it. I have to live with intention. I have to live my life on purpose because the clock is ticking and I don't have time to waste. And I guess we all, even if we don't know that exact moment, we're all in the same situation. I just have a little broader perspective on where my life, is, where that crossroads will occur. Mm-hmm. But I don't make any decisions based on my time that I spent with a naughty. I don't, I still, there are times when I say the wrong thing, where I feel pain from it, where I apologize, where I have to go back, where I'm conflicted about things. But if I come back to these teachings, it helps me understand it. It gives me permission to move on. I'm a lot more apologetic. I'm a lot more forgiving. I ask for forgiveness more often. I grant forgiveness more often. I have more compassion. So I think just that knowledge that the clock is ticking and that I'm not here for eternity. Mm-hmm. At least my physical body is not here for eternity. I believe we are eternal beings, but not this flesh casing. This flesh casing has an expiration date on it. All of us. We have an expiration date. We should try to make something special happen before that expiration date does. And whether we know it, you could like buy some food, put it in your refrigerator, and even if you're not paying attention to the expiration date, it's not going to last forever. Mm-hmm. So you better drink it or eat it or use it. So that's, it's an interesting, when things happen, I go, oh yeah. And I check it, but I don't live my life waiting for that checkbox to be fulfilled.
Thank you for sharing on that. Let's get into the sacred powers. Maybe sacred power of presence first, and the reason is because if you're told all of the bad things, in quotes, that you've done in the past, it's akin to so many of us carrying around all of this baggage with us, sort of like having those 60, 70,000 thoughts a day, and we have the same recurring thoughts where we're not living here and now, we're living then in the past. You were given quite the then in the past to be pulled away from the present moment.
Yes. So my past, when I look back, I'm also seeing this whole chunk of time before I came into this incarnation. So, but that I've made peace with that, and I'm okay with that. When people say to me, "Oh, would you do a past life regression?" and I've done tons of past life regressions, and I've experienced them, and I've been walked through them, and I performed them with lots of people. What I say, it's so much more important to me what happened in 1995 rather than 1895, okay? That doesn't really matter to me, what happened to you in 1895. What really happens is, what are the choices and what are the things that happened to you in 1995? Let's go to that place and let's start to make peace with that. Because I believe who you and I are and who we all are right now has much less to do with what happened in past lives as it does with what's happened since we came out of the womb in this life. Yeah. And I think that we all are dragging baggage around. We all, when I was reading the 70 things that people don't know about you, but now we do know about you. The pain of having to run to and from school because you were being bullied. But of course, you would say, oh, well, that's made me an amazing athlete. Like I wouldn't have it any other way. Thank God. Those bullies were my greatest teachers. They were like gods and goddesses who came here to bring me into my current body, to strengthen my physical body, and to teach me about perseverance, and to teach me about getting back up. So we can only access those types of thoughts when we are in the present moment. If we're going to spend all of our time here in the past, or all of our time here in the future, we're never living life. We're just sitting in memories and fantasies. Pick it. What do you want? Memories and fantasies, or the real right now? This sacred, precious present moment. And I think that, this doesn't exist and that doesn't exist. Those are just, those are little chemical firings going on in our brain. What exists is the choice we have right now. What exists is the breath we take right now. What exists is the reflectiveness we have right now, and leaning into our heart and allowing that to guide us. So the sacred power of presence, for me, it's foundational. It's the first sacred power that I talk about, and it's the first sacred power that comprises this divine principle of one, which I believe, and for thousands of years, and I don't mean like 1,000 years, but like 10,000 years, has been a universal truth, a universal principle, a universal law that's governed us, no different than gravity or electricity or condensation, anything along those lines. And so presence is core. It's the starting point for everything. If we are not present, we are not aware. And if you're not aware, you're not paying attention. And if you're not paying attention, you can't even determine what's my next step. What will my words flow? What will my physical action be? So the sacred power of presence, if everyone could just learn that one sacred power, the world would shift, because all of our bad decisions come from fear or desperation, or mindlessness, or thoughtlessness, or conditioning, all that stuff in the past and in the future. But when we make decisions, choices from the present moment, everything unfolds in alignment with how the universe is supposed to unfold. And those are really, in my opinion, those are the most authentic choices we can make, not driven by chemicals and hormones, but truly driven by the universe breathing into us and us breathing back out with a word, a thought, or an action. So when we're in our foundational formative, imprinting years, and someone's not teaching us about being present or breathing, or just waiting a beat, or just allowing something to unfold. That classic Lao Tzu quote, do you have the patience to wait until your mud settles and the water is clear? There's a second part to that statement by Lao Tzu. Can you remain unmoving till the right action arises by itself? It's like, whew, that's tough, because we're always trying to pull the chrysalis open so we can reveal the butterfly, but we go, oh yeah, that kills the butterfly. Forgot about that. We're always trying to finish somebody's thought, or word or action. We're always trying to meet an expectation. And when we stop trying, when we stop doing, and I'm not a slacker. I don't vote for us like sitting on the couch and meditating for the rest of our lives and hoping stuff turns out okay. I believe we must lean hard in the direction of our dreams, but we can't force stuff. Mm-hmm. We need to get, you can force it, but you rarely get the outcome that you're truly desiring. So I think that if we can just be a little, patient, allow our mud to settle, and then remain unmoving till the right action arises by itself. What does that mean? It means prepare, and have that preparation meet the opportunity, and then seize the opportunity.
Woohoo! Let's jump. Let's jump from there. And you've got the superpower Om on going today. I love it. I love it. I love it.
Power Om.
So let's go from there. Let's go to the sacred power of your ripple.
Yes. Well, this also, a lot of times we feel like we're in a vacuum or we feel isolated. There are times in our life where we distinctly feel very, very alone. We feel separate from something. Or like if something's not going well in your life, you could interpret it as, oh, I'm out here all alone. I don't have the support of my family, my friends, my community, the universe. No one's got my back. And the power of your ripple is so critical that we understand that, there are people being touched by this conversation that you and I don't even know who they are. But they're going to suddenly have an aha moment from something you or I say, or a moment of clarity in that. And so one of the most magnificent aspects to this concept of ripple is that according to really the oldest laws that have governed the galaxies and the planets in the solar system, we can go on and on and on, and Einstein was adamant about this, and science has now confirmed this. Energy cannot be created nor destroyed. Mm-hmm. Einstein used the word, it can only be changed. I prefer to use the word transformed, but he used the word changed. That's a direct quote of Einstein, from one form to another, which means you and I aren't creating anything. Inspire Nation is not an invention. It's been going on for millennia. It's been going on for millions of years. You're just stepping in to act as this powerful conduit to share, all these different voices throughout the world. I think you've shared in, over 190 countries or something like that. So there's people from all over the world. So when we think about it, in every moment we are rippling. We are receiving in a ripple, mm-hmm. or ripples, and we are flowing out a ripple or ripples. That's happening with our eye contact. That's happening with our energy that's just in our body. It's happening with our electromagnetic ripplings outside and inside of our flesh. It happens with our thoughts. It happens with our words. It happens with our interactions. And so we have such power right now to really powerfully impact not just, our lives, but the entire planet. And that's why when people point at something 1,000 miles away and say, oh, I can't stand what's going on in this country. There's abuse and violence, or there's, I don't like who's in the White House, or I don't like this thing, or, and they point at all these things thousands of miles away. Yes, of course, you could send money there. Yes, of course, you could send your heart there. But you could probably start a little closer to home. How about forgive yourself? Start that. Because if you're thinking about, those poor people who've just had their village swept away by a tsunami, let me send them money so they can rebuild. And if you're simultaneously doing that and being harsh to yourself, barking at your coworkers, being intolerant to the people that you live with, then you're posing. Then that's an act. We have to start here. So the power of your ripple starts in your center, in your core. And that's why if we can be kinder to ourselves, if we can, there's the Buddhist phrase for that is Maitri, M-A-R-T-R-I, self-kindness. That's we all miss that. Well, you can't be kind to someone else if you're not kind to yourself. That means it's an act. You can't love somebody else if you're not really loving yourself. You can't have compassion for somebody else if you're not really self-compassionate. Then you're a poser. Then you're an actor. And I'm not saying that's good or bad, but ultimately, if you're acting all day long in every single moment, you'll collapse. It's exhausting. And you won't ultimately experience any fulfillment. And you're just posing in all these different places. Oh, I'm kind, I'm loving, I'm compassionate, but not here. So that's why the power of our ripple is so core to our existence. And it flows, first there's the sacred power of presence, mm-hmm. where we own the present moment. Then we acknowledge, accept, and begin to recognize and become part of this universal flow.
Thank you. What you said is so powerful and important, but people can misinterpret it if maybe we don't see some clarity to it. If they hear, I can't be loving to somebody else and loving until I'm loving to myself. I can't be compassionate to somebody else unless I'm compassionate to myself. People then can turn it around and say, well, then I'm a poser and a bad person because such and such, such and such. How do we help them to step past that?
Well, we can do it on the flip side. We can do it when we find ourselves being judgmental of somebody else, okay? And then we realize, why would we even feel comfortable judging somebody else? It's because we become comfortable judging ourselves. Mm-hmm. So if in those moments of judgment, self-judgment or external judgment, if we could suddenly go, oh my God, I'm judging somebody else for yelling. I've yelled. Let me forgive myself. Let me forgive them. And then suddenly we move from that judgment and lack of compassion, lack of kindness, lack of love, self-love and love of others, and it becomes authentic. It becomes actually real. You know, no one's a bad person because they give somebody $5 who's homeless as they walk past them sitting on the street. That doesn't make you a bad person. But that should be a moment where you say, am I being that kind to myself?
Thank you.
Am I holding myself to a standard that I've been holding myself to since I'm 5, and yet I'm so able to not hold that homeless person or that person in pain or that person who's just experienced a trauma or that person. You know, there's a couple different levels of this. We all understand the concept of sympathy. Mm-hmm. Sympathy is like, oh, I'm sorry for your loss. It doesn't say anything about you at all. Sorry for your loss. Empathy is, I feel the pain of your loss. Compassion is, I feel the pain of your loss and I'm rooting for your suffering to end. Mm-hmm. And in the Bible, even more extreme compassion is, I feel the pain of your loss. I'm rooting for your suffering to end. And I'd be willing to carry your burden. Like it's that he ain't heavy, he's my brother kind of line. And so, no, we're all doing our best. So we should never feel, oh, I'm a bad person because I'm being generous to someone outside of us. But as your arm is extending out to someone, remember, are you being as generous to yourself? This is not selfishness. This is self-care. Because if I am more generous to myself, I can actually give more. Yes. If I am more loving to myself, I can love more freely without saying, oh, no, I only love this person. This person I don't love. You know, it reminds me of a conversation. I saw His Holiness the Dalai Lama being interviewed on TV a couple of years ago, like maybe 8 years ago. And they said to him, maybe 10 years ago. Oh, I'm sorry. It's 18 years ago. Or 17 years ago. It was right after we had attacked Iraq. Mm-hmm. And so we've been doing the whole Iraq attack thing for maybe it was 6 months or a year, and George W. Bush and Dick Cheney, the president and vice president, were being demonized, in the public. So they were like, persona non grata, for causing that war, creating that war at the time. Just in the political zeitgeist. And so they asked His Holiness the Dalai Lama, and they said, all right, so what's your opinion of George Bush? So here you have like the most peaceful man on the planet and the perceived most violent man on the planet, in that moment. The dichotomy was breathtaking. And he said, I love George Bush. I love George W. Bush. I don't agree with his policies. Mm-hmm. I don't like his policies. But I love George W. Bush. And that was just like, I was like, yeah, absolutely. We can be a little nuanced with our heart and separate. Yeah, I don't like what you're doing right now, but I adore you. I love you. I care for you. And so I don't agree with what you're putting in place. And let's talk about the policies. It's got nothing to do with you. If I love you and we can talk and communicate and exchange, then maybe we can work on changing these policies. But if I just attack you as a demon, then realistically, those policies, I'm not going to be the one to get you to change those policies. So I think that, all love begins with self-love, all true love. Does that mean we can't love someone when we're feeling less than? No, we're all feeling less than. We're all struggling with our own worthiness on a consistent basis. Oh, I could have showed up better. I could have done a better job. I could have said better words. I could have been more articulate. I could have been more impeccable. I could have tried harder. The list of all those things goes on. But if that's clouding who you are as you show up every day, then you sort of like owning that, allowing that, as you point to all these other people who are doing great jobs. And you're missing that at your core, there's magnificence. We are these divine, magnificent beings created in the image of the divine. And we get to flow that and love that. And that's why I use the phrase a lot, aham brahmasmi, baby.
Mm-hmm.
And I have some born again Christian friends who say, hey, did you just say you were God? I said, no. I said aham brahmasmi. I am the universe. Remember, God created the heavens and the earth. I'm a creation of the divine. So I'm not dissing your God. I'm sort of acknowledging, I'm part of that whole thing. So we are these divine beings, and we are entitled to love ourselves. We are worthy of self-forgiveness. There's so many magnificent aspects of ourself that we're just not giving ourselves credit for. So if you're generous to someone else, rock on, be more generous. But know that if you could just be a little kinder to yourself, you could even be more generous.
Woohoo!
It's that classic, gotta put that oxygen mask on yourself first so you can serve the world. And I only know this from 18 years of working in the corporate world, where I woke up every day, and put that mask on everything and every person and every being in my life, and ultimately collapsed from, exhaustion. And so, but if we nourish this, my schedule is 10 times, I work 18 hours a day now. I work 7 days a week. I travel thousands of miles. I touch so many more people, but I'm nourishing myself every single day with meditation. I'm nourishing myself with heart opening. I'm nourishing myself with a daily gratitude practice. I'm nourishing myself with random acts of kindness. I'm nourishing myself by practicing yoga every day, doing all these different things. And that allows me to serve at such a higher level. I thought I was serving. I wasn't even close to serving. Now I get to really wake up and serve. And I have all the energy to serve until I collapse. And when I wake up in the morning, I feel refreshed. I don't feel exhausted.
Do you do a ritual, a rite in the morning? Because you mentioned aham brahmasmi. Do you do something in the morning? This gets into the sacred power of spirit to kind of remind yourself who you are.
Yes, yes, and throughout the book, I share these morning rituals that we can all, do for different things to suddenly embrace the divine principle of one, or the divine principle of awareness, or the divine principle of rebirth, which I think is so important. We all should embrace our daily rebirth, our weekly rebirth, our seasonal rebirth, to embrace the divine principle of infinite flow, reminding me that, to trust in every moment, as well as the divine principle of inner fire, which really sparks my passion and my purpose. So yes, I have a whole bunch of rituals, and depending on what's happening in my life in a given day or a given week, I do, I wake up, and the first thing I do when I wake up is this is getting a little personal. The first thing I do when I wake up is I kiss Peaches, the Buddha princess, and then she rolls on her back, and then I rub the back of her spine, and I give her sort of like little spine massage, and then rub her belly, and that's like 5 minutes, and that's how I start every single day. That's sort of like it. But my morning ritual is then to I believe in RPM, rise, pee, meditate. So then I pee. Then I sit down with Peaches. We meditate. And I believe if people don't meditate, I've created this concept known as meditation. So you don't even have to leave your bed. So especially if you have like a snooze button, it's perfect. So normally we wake up and you tap the snooze and you just lay there and you hit it and you go back to bed.
Mm-hmm.
But now, if you knowing that you can be a meditator, because snoozers used to be perceived as losers, but I think meditators shifts that dialogue, and snoozers can be winners. And so what you do is you tap the snooze button, keep your eyes closed, hold your blankie up, slide your tush to the edge of your headboard so you're sitting up, keep your eyes closed, and then just sit there and meditate. And you could just follow your breath. You could use a mantra, and there are so many different mantras that I share in Sacred Powers, but you can use other mantras if you like them. And then you can use the 7,000-year-old mantra Soham, which is, so easy. And so just do that. And then 10 minutes later, guess what? Your meditation timer goes off. Remember that snooze button that you tapped? You've transformed it into a meditation timer. And now you actually have 10 minutes of stillness and silence. And a lot of people say, but I'll fall back asleep. Okay, you were sleeping anyway. How science has now made this so important. Modern science, chronobiology, has now confirmed that if you wake up and the sun has risen, serotonin has stopped and melatonin has stopped flowing through your body. They suppressed. The second the sun comes up, serotonin and melatonin get suppressed. So what we're trying to do when we snooze is we don't know this, we're trying to, if I could just get 10 more minutes of serotonin and melatonin, that would be like so amazing. But the reality is, no, they've already stopped. Those hormones and chemicals have turned off. So that sleep is fake sleep. It's faux sleep. It's not nourishing. It's not accomplishing what you need to do. It serves no purpose. But if you meditate for those 10 minutes, instead of fake sleeping for 10 minutes, now what happens when we meditate is we allow our growth hormones, we allow our sex hormones, we allow our immune system to rise up. And what gets suppressed when we meditate? Adrenaline, cortisol, and glucagon. And so you can actually allow a new resurgence of serotonin and melatonin into your body. So they've now proven that meditation is more restorative than sleep. So there's no excuse now. So if your excuse is like, but I'll fall asleep. Okay, you'll fall asleep. That's okay. What's the worst that could happen? You fall asleep, you relaxed your body so much that you fell back asleep. Only 3 things can happen when you meditate. You could have thoughts, you could fall asleep, or you could experience stillness. That's it. Those are the only things that could happen. So if any or all of those things happen in any combination, that's the sign of a verified meditation. So score. You fall back asleep? Yes. But this way you're doing it sitting up while you're connecting to stillness and silence. It's beautiful. So, but I digress. So then I meditate.
Yep.
And then at the end of my meditate, I do, actually, why don't we do it here? I can share with our viewers here and our participants, just a little bit of some of the practices that I typically do, and they can integrate them into their life.
Beautiful. Thank you.
Okay, so the most important thing is that you're comfortable. Comfort is queen, always. So never feel you have to sit up with a rigid spine or keep your hands in hand mudras. If you want to do that, fine. But don't do it because you saw it in a movie or because somebody told you to do that. Always get comfortable. So we get as comfortable as possible, and then we close our eyes. And together, let's take a long, slow, deep breath in. And let's gently let that go. And let's do that one more time. Long, slow, deep breath in. And gently release it. And now just observe your breath as it flows in and as it flows back out. Just watch it. Witness it. Just observe it. And thoughts may come into your awareness. That's okay. Treat them like clouds. Let them come, let them go. Sounds may come into your awareness. That's perfect. None of us live in a recording studio or a soundproof booth. You may drift away to some physical sensations. You can pay attention to them and then drift back to your breath. And now let's invite an intention into our awareness. Just something we'd like to see unfold, maybe today, this week, this month. Maybe it's the big kahuna of all intentions. The big intention for 2018. Just invite it into your awareness. Allow it to crystallize. And now when you're clear on that intention, gently invite it into your heart. Feel it settle in. And now plant that intention like a seed in the fertile soil of your heart. Plant it deep. Take a long, slow, deep breath in. And gently let that go. We'll leave it up to the universe to answer. We'll leave it up to spirit to sort out all those details. And let's ask ourselves a few sacred questions. First, let's ask, do I agree I cannot step into the past and change it? And next, let's ask, do I agree I cannot step into the future to force it? Next, let's ask, do I have the patience to wait until my mud settles and the water is clear? Next, let's ask, do I give myself permission to show up right now as my best, most brilliant, most creative expression of myself? And lastly, let's ask, am I willing to breathe deeply into this moment and awaken my best version? And now in this space, as you continue to watch your breath, move your fingertips to the space where you feel the divine coming into you. Where is that space where you feel the breath entering into you? We know that the great Canadian sage Leonard Cohen wrote, "Ring the bells that still can ring. Forget your perfect offering. There is a crack in everything. That's how the light gets in." So let's move our fingertips to that space where the light is coming into us. It could be down deep in your belly, your solar plexus, your chest, your heart, your throat, your nose, your mouth, your third eye, the crown of your head. Maybe it's on the side of your body someplace. Just gently rest your fingertips against that space. And as you watch your breath, notice that healing light moving past your fingertips into you. As you exhale, feel that breath move back out past your fingertips. And let's just stay in this space. And now take a long, slow, deep breath in. And gently let that go. Let's do that one more time. Long, slow, deep breath in. And gently release it. And now let's seal the intention we've planted. Let's seal that soul awakening that we've just established. And let's celebrate the power of our collective, that community, by chanting the universal vibration Om. Take a long, slow, deep breath in. And now in this space, take a long, slow, deep breath in of healing metta. Feel it fill your heart. And as you exhale, send that healing love to someone you know who's suffering, struggling, or in pain. Let's do that one more time. Long, slow, deep breath in. Feel that love fill your heart. Feel that healing energy of divine love. And as you exhale, radiate it out to someone who's suffering, struggling, or in pain. You're just a conduit of love. Just a channel of love. And when it feels comfortable, you can slowly open your eyes. Woohoo!
Couldn't put it better myself. Woohoo! Thank you.
So that's what I call the soul awakening
Oh,
meditation. And that establishes our oneness. And that puts everything in perspective. Because it shows that even your generosity to someone else is coming into you, expanding your heart, coming into you, and then flowing back out. So it flips the script on all of that.
woohoo!
Hey, I don't know if you could hear it. I couldn't see it. But there was like a hummingbird. You know, I don't know if everybody heard like zzz,
Yeah.
but I just, you know, he came to check out our meditation. Or she came to check out our meditation. That was beautiful.
Very, very, very cool. I'm going to go back to the mic right afterwards because I know I heard something, and I heard also the bird switch from one song to another. From a
Yes.
So
Yeah. No, there was some action going on here. We transform the world by transforming ourselves.
all right, 2 real quick questions, Davidji, and everybody's going to want to go out and get this book. In fact, where can people go to find Sacred Powers, to find out more? And I love it. I love it. I love it. I cannot speak highly enough about it to change your life.
You can find Sacred Powers any place that books are sold.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, in Canada, Indigo. I'm a big fan of Indigo Chapters. Amazon. I think you can even get the digital version of it on iTunes. BarnesandNoble.com or Barnes and Noble in real life. Brick and mortar stores. And but I would hope that people know how much heart and how much transformation of me went into this, and you will feel that energy when you're reading the book, because you'll feel it in yourself. It has nothing to do with me at that point. It's the power of our ripple, and there are so many things that we can do to keep that ripple alive in our life.
How long did it take you to write this book?
I started writing notes about this book about a year ago, and then it truly was like a deep dive of about 6 months.
Awesome. So on that note, is there a URL, website you want to send people to, and to find out your show as well?
Sure. You can visit davidji.com, davidji.com, /Sacred Powers. Or anywhere, join the Davidji Sweet Spot community. You get free meditation every week, free video lessons. There's over 170 free guided meditations on davidji.com. And you can listen to me every Thursday at 11 a.m. Pacific time. That would be 2 p.m. Eastern time on Hay House Radio for your soul. And that show is live from the Sweet Spot. And I'm always with my host, Peaches, the Buddha Princess, who teaches in every moment, resist nothing, and you will receive unconditional love.
And Peaches is?
Peaches is a rescue, an LA rescue. Mm-hmm. She's a mindful Morkie. She adopt your next pet. That's a big, important message that people should have out there.
Amen.
And she is my greatest teacher. She's 10 years old this July 23rd. She's been with me for 9 of those 10 years. And we won the Pet Lookalike contest in Cardiff by the Sea, only a week after we were together, and then we retired from that profession of entering lookalike contests. You can also follow me on Instagram at Davidji Meditation, and you can follow Peaches on Facebook as well, at Peaches, the Buddha Princess.
Awesome. And do you have that photo up there anywhere for people to check out?
I don't, but I have this photo.
Right on the back of the book, Peaches and Davidji. I love it.
Right.
So last question I've got for you. I'm kind of throwing 2 questions in together. First off, any last homework that you want to give people today so that they can take action on what they've heard, and last words of wisdom combined?
Well, I don't. Hopefully, everyone was inspired by something that either one of us said today to start integrating that practice into your life. That's really the homework is to pay attention. Pay attention. In Aldous Huxley's book, Island, there's a bird that flies over the island over the course of the day that says, attention, attention, attention. So if we all have that awareness that in any moment we can stop, take a time in, pay attention to the moment, stop, breathe in, connect. Ask yourself, why do I fear? Because I do not trust. And then just trust a little bit more, or breathe a little bit more, or forgive a little bit more, or just be kinder to yourself. So if you can do any of those things today, powerful homework. Of course, I would say definitely get Sacred Powers. That's your number 1 homework assignment. But just trust your heart. Your heart never lies. This lies a lot, but your heart never lies. So when we can connect to it truly, we can quiet the fluctuations of our mind. We can actually hear the whispers of our heart.
Woohoo! Thank you so much, Davidji. This was beautiful. And thank you to, if I get her name, the Sacred Peaches, is it? Oh my.
Peaches, the Buddha Princess.
Thank you. Thank you to Peaches, the Buddha Princess. Thank you to the birds. Thank you to the hummingbirds. Thank you to the universe.
Pretty special. Yeah, well, thank you, Michael. Thank you for inviting me to be here and sharing your audience with me. And hopefully we'll come back, connect. I don't know where you'll be living or where you'll be broadcasting from, but I look forward to spending some more time with you as well.
Would love it, love it, love it. So for everyone out there, this is Michael Sandler saying, be well, have fun, get sacred powers, and begin growing your attention today. And shine bright. Woohoo! Namaste.
Namaste.
Thank you so, so much, Davidji.
Yeah, thank you. That was great. That was fun.
Thanks so much for watching. If you enjoyed it, be sure to like below. Also, leave your comments. Have some real fun with it. Subscribe to our channel where you're going to get more great videos, more interviews coming up. And check out our website, inspirenationshow.com. That's where you'll find tips, blogs, information, videos you won't find anywhere else, and useful and helpful resources to really help you kickstart your life and to shine bright. Thanks so much again. Thank you for your support. Like, comment, subscribe. See the website. Thanks so much and have fun. Of course, shine bright. Woohoo!